keep the positive energy going, right? Our next speaker is the first of two in this second sort of section, if you will, of today's live stream. We're going to be talking vulnerabilities. I'd love for you to allow me to introduce a good friend. He's a SANS certified instructor, Mr. Ryan Chapman. Ryan teaches SANS Forensics 610 and is the author of the all-new SANS course on ransomware, Forensics 528, ransomware for incident responders. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you for the intro. I really appreciate it. So yes, I am the author of the new SANS course, Forensics 528, ransomware for incident responders. Unfortunately, ransomware and healthcare are kind of going hand in hand right now. In general, they don't mix, right? We don't want that, of course. However, what we're seeing is that it's very, very common that the two intertwine, and we don't want that. So what we want to do is get rid of that, right? We want to stop all that silliness from happening. So speaking of vulnerabilities, I want to share my screen out here. We're going to go with this guy right there. Go. All right. Can you see my screen? I think we're good. So yeah, there it is. Let's talk about vulnerabilities in relation to ransomware. All right, first up, this slide pretty much says it all. I'm author of the Forensics 528. I currently work as a principal incident response consultant for BlackBerry, which means that my job is to respond to incidents, and many of those incidents happen to be ransomware. I also help run a conference called CactusCon, which is it's the like security / hacker conference for Arizona in the United States. And I'm a retro gaming enthusiast. I love playing like the old video games that you see perhaps right behind me. So, did you know that in the past 90 days, for the past pretty much year or so, that healthcare has been at the very top of the list of sectors that have been impacted by ransomware? Yeah. How much does that suck? It sucks this much, a lot. So the past 90 days, there were, we track data leak sites. DLS, data leak sites for ransomware operators. There are a number of operation crews. They go by the term ransomware as a service because they provide their services. Essentially, they lease them out to others. The others carry out the actual attacks. They are the ones who bring in the revenue, and then the revenue is split between the involved parties. You might be wondering, that sounds like multi-level marketing or sounds like a pyramid scheme. Yeah, 100%, 100%, exactly what it is. So the more and more that these groups build up their capabilities and the more they build out training, what we're seeing is that they are basically providing these documents, these training documents to the individuals that we call the affiliates. And they're the ones who come in and say, hey, I don't know how to make ransomware, but I want to make money from it, right? That's pretty much what that's all about. And we see them going after hospital, healthcare all the time. All right. My slide's supposed to say hospital and healthcare. You get the idea, right? So not only is healthcare super common right now, but did you know the world's first recognized ransomware is related to the overall healthcare industry? The first piece of malware that was ever identified and labeled, that's ransomware, right? It was sometimes known as the PC Cyborg Trojan, but it's more commonly known as the AIDS Trojan. The breakdown is as follows. In 1989, the World Health Organization, I went like this, World Health Organization held a conference for AIDS research. And at the time, obviously in the late 80s, early 90s, that was a huge, important thing. Not that it's not now. I'm just saying it was like, holy crud, we need to get all these people involved and put as much effort into this freaking thing as possible, right? So this organization, the WHO conference, there was a mailing list essentially of the people who were invited and involved. There's different numbers out there that you'll hear about, but the common number I use is around 15,000 of these entities, right? People, organizations, what have you, who attended that conference, received in the mail a floppy disk. And we're talking technically, 5.25, like a big boy. We're going back to 89, right? So the floppy disk, it says, hey, this will help you with AIDS research. And they said, okay. They popped it in their computer. It turns out the disk actually had software that was useful to aid in the efforts of researching AIDS, right? Unfortunately, what it would also do is it would install basically malware that had a timer. And after the computer booted around 90 times, there are different variants, some were more or less, but the most common one was 90 times. All of a sudden, the user would experience the screen that you're seeing right in front of you here. And this had never been seen before. There had never been a situation where someone had a computing resource that was all of a sudden locked down because of malware and the sense of pay us money or you're not going to get it back. So ransomware started really with the healthcare sector. How much does that suck, right? A very high number of the people who were impacted by this, what they simply did was reformat their computers. Now, it's cute that I say what they simply did, right? They just reinstalled DOS at that point, right? But we're talking about 89, 90, right? These people, were they backing up their research? You'd think that's critical, important research, right? No, they weren't backing it up. There were years, and I mean years, of AIDS research lost because of this stupid ransomware that was the start of it all, right? Oh, what a great, wonderful welcome to the world for ransomware. Like, thanks. There were, technically, by the way, it didn't actually encrypt the files. It renamed them, but it didn't actually encrypt them. A lot of people didn't even realize that or notice that, but it also basically let them know that, hey, you're not going to get these things back. And it was just a massive, massive problem. So let's talk about vulnerabilities, right? I take a lot of water breaks. Just ignore that for now. The top 3 infection vectors for ransomware have been the 3 on your screen right now. We see them all the time, right? You have remote desktop protocol, you have phishing, and you have software vulnerabilities. These things are so common that it's just over and over and over and over. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see a graphic from a company called Coveware. They are one of the largest, if not the largest, negotiation firms for engaging with the threat actors. And they, because of their wealth of cases that they see, right, the breadth of their knowledge essentially with direct interaction, I like their stats quite a bit, far more so than many other organizations. You may notice ransomware stats, if you can have a report that comes out one month and then the next month, or even a couple the same week, they never match on stats. It's just there's a whole lot to it, why that is. But anyways, I like Covert data, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Notice that here we have at the top, back in 2018 Q4, remote desktop protocol was at 80%, at 90, like what is that number? It's way up there. Okay, that has come down a bit, down to, was it 35-ish or something? 30. And what's coming up? Phishing. You notice they literally crisscross, doop, 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 right? So you have remote desktop protocol. If you're wondering, well, what is that? Hold on a moment. We're going to do it in the next slide. I'll tell you, right? And then phishing. We all know what phishing is, okay? And then we have software vulnerability. There's something I want to explain about software vulnerabilities, right? And a big thing about that is that we always say, or we always hear, I should say, I don't say, I try to not say this, that software vulnerabilities that are, software exploitation, if you will. If something's vulnerable, you have to write code to exploit that vulnerability, right? So those bits of code, right, when they come out and they're documented and it's like, hey, there's this crazy big bad rut-row and we all have to patch against it. Here, the patch is now out, okay? That is what we commonly see having already existed for months or even perhaps years by the time someone uses that actual exploit. What I'm getting at is the media likes to say the term 0 day, and they like to refer to the fact that a lot of the exploits are actually brand new security vulnerabilities that have like just been divulged, and or they're ascribing this label of 0 day. By far and large, 0 days are not the most common reason for software exploitation. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's usually something that has had a patch available for it for who knows how long. I recently worked a case where the intrusion vector was an exploit for what was known as log4shell. which was a vulnerability in Log4j. Log4j is the name of the project. We call it Log4j. And that is a logging mechanism for applications written in Java, right? Its purpose is to assist with logging, as in your application does X, Y, Z, and you're creating a log saying my application did X, Y, Z. Adding a wealth of information to try to track what the product is doing and all that type of stuff. So it is a library that is implemented in a number of projects around the world, right? So it's very important, by the way, that everyone has their eyes on a bill of material, a BOM, if you will, for your software products. If you make software, your organization, whatever, you may not be typing it up yourself, but if you make something, you're going to have a number of third-party projects involved in that. If those have a vulnerability, then you may have a vulnerability. And that's the problem with the Log4Shell. There were a number of organizations who didn't even realize, oh, we use that, right? So Log4Shell was documented for a solid month before many vendors were like, oh, turns out we're impacted by that, meaning you're impacted by that. The case I worked recently was a VMware Horizon appliance that was vulnerable. And I mean, this patch was out, I don't remember how long. What month is this? Are we in the 10th month of the year? No, 9th. Where am I? I don't know. It's almost a year now. The patch has been out and it just never got applied. So yeah, no good. All right, let's move on. I'm going to talk about RDP, phishing, and software vulnerabilities, and essentially why they're the bane of our existence at this point. Okay. Remote desktop protocol. What is it? What is RDP? First off, we're not generally talking about remote services like a company VPN or something like that. We are specifically talking about the one protocol called remote desktop protocol. It used to be called terminal services. It is Microsoft's protocol that allows remote access into a Windows host. It is designed to provide a remote desktop, hence the name of the protocol, right? So why is this an issue? Well, first off, it's super common in organizations. Your organization uses RDP. I don't care what you say. No, you don't. Yeah. Oh, you do. Right? But the problem is RDP being left open to the internet facing, as I like to say, and not being restricted and being too easy to access from the outside. Okay, so if you have this open on servers, for example, that's bad. What if you have it open on your backup servers or your domain controllers open to the internet? And you're probably sitting there going, that's stupid. There's no way anyone has that. Okay. For years, it was the top infection vector. I've worked cases, you can name it, what type of critical server you may have where your intellectual property is or whatever. They've been left wide open. The problem with that is then all a threat actor needs to do is authenticate successfully to that device. So where's the problem come then? Well, that's the third bullet point down. Weak password policies and no MFA, right? When I say password policies, your password policy may actually allow a threat actor to still get in because your passwords will be weak. And you're thinking, well, I mean, we've designed a strong password policy or we're using some of the industry standards, right? Yeah, well, it's the user though. That's the thing. By the way, our biggest vulnerability is us. We humans, we're the biggest freaking vulnerability possible. Now, there's obvious signs, right? Who writes the software? Oh, we do. So everything's, who made computers in the first place? We did. Not that abstract, but your users, and hopefully not you, may have horrible passwords. And you may have a password policy you think is awesome, but it's really not. Okay. More on that coming up shortly. The other thing is that many organizations don't recognize the threat because they don't know that they have RDP exposed to the internet. So here's the task for everyone here. All right. If this is under your purview, your umbrella, awesome. If it is something that you can work with someone else at your organization about, on, awesome. And if not, make it so. Make that the case. Like go do it. All right. So you have to actively scan your own environments from the outside and from the inside. You want to find out, is that RDP letting stuff out? Is it letting in? Like what's going on with that? So how do you do that? Well, there's a number of ways to do it. Okay. So one of them is just simply looking at the most common port for RDP. The network port is 3389. That's the default. It doesn't mean your organization didn't randomly decide, oh, we're going to use 4567. Why not? Actually, did I say 4567? That's a horrible, don't do that. I just realized what I just said. Make it 928. Who cares? Point being is you can use a non-standard port. It will still be found. I'm telling you, it will still be found because it's very easy to recognize that a given port is offering the potential to connect to RDP. It's called banner grabbing or service identification. RDP is noisy. If I go up against a network port and I say, hey, what are you? RDP goes, I'm RDP. Get really loud, right? It's very easy to determine this. If you don't have multi-factor enabled, and if you have someone who maybe phishes the organization, right, and they get someone's credentials, I mean, their password, right? So they have their username and password. They can then leverage that, yeah, sure, to log into email and then perhaps engage in a business email compromise endeavor, right? And they probably will, but they can also then try, well, your company VPN, and you know what? RDP. And so, unfortunately, most groups are not actively scanning themselves. So I want to take a moment. Actually, I'll go ahead and finish out the methods of access, and then I'm going to take a moment to show you just how bad this is. Okay, just how bad this is. So, how are threat actors getting in? Right, one way they're doing it is via password spraying and/or brute forcing. One moment. I ran a class this week, and I've been talking a mile a minute for I don't know how long. You're probably surprised I could talk a lot, right? No way. All right, so check it out. I made a notepad. I have a PowerPoint, and somehow I decided to put this in Notepad++. I don't know. Why not? It's just something in my head said, let's do it. So your password policy, what is it? Ask yourself, what is my password policy? Don't just ask yourself what it's supposed to be. Because personally, as an incident responder, I don't care at all what you have down on paper. It means nothing to me, right? Well, that's a bit harsh. That's a bit much, Ryan. You have to have those policies. Please, please, please have those policies. And I'm not trying to say they're worthless. What I'm saying is if it's not implemented and enforced, then it's useless and it's meaningless, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So, okay, if your password policy that is hopefully enforced within Active Directory, right? If you're a Windows network, which many of you most likely are, you may know that for years we've said you need to have at least 8 characters, which by the way, that sucks. 8 characters, up. If you ask me, I'll be like 16, 20. It's an ongoing debate in the InfoSec world. How many characters should it really be, right? If it's too many, your users won't be able to remember them. They'll save them in stupid places. Okay, I'm saying at least, I love at least 12. I love at least 16 personally, but it gets into a back and forth and a debate kind of thing. 8's not enough. I like 12 plus. NIST, a bunch of departments have their own values. Okay, sure. But for years, we said at least 8, at least 1 uppercase letter, at least 1 number, and at least 1 special character. And honestly, for years, it was actually just that, right? It was basically alpha numeric and then a special character. So alpha, at least 1 numeric, a number, and a special character. Okay, so let's just say you also have the requirement of a capital letter. All right, so check this out. Let's just say that you have, I'm verifying my screen sharing. Yeah, we're good. Let's just say that you have this policy. Okay, there was a group that went by the name APT33. Well, they didn't go by that name at all. That name was ascribed to them by the folks over at Mandiant, who most of you are probably familiar with as being one of the largest for years, actually, incident response firms, cybersecurity incident response firms, like what I do, right? So this group, APT33, they were based out of Iran. And their thing in 2015 and 16, they realized, I'm not sure how they did, but they realized that people were using the following types of passwords, right? I just remembered where I was in the world. It's September. Did you all know it's September? Because I just remembered. So it's September 2022, exclamation point. This is 8 characters or more. It has a capital letter. It has lowercase letters. It has numbers. And it has a special character. And sometimes I could just do, different special characters after it, or I could just maybe use like something like that, or, whatever. We were also seeing people do cute things like that. That works. The problem with this is it was so freaking rampant. And this group identified this by spraying these passwords around the world, basically, that they were getting into organizations fairly easily. They were targeting the energy sector, which obviously that's bad. And so they were having a high level of success. A password spray is when I take a password, a single password, and I spray it against a number of hosts. It is not your typical brute forcing. In your typical brute forcing, what you end up having is you have a host. running RDP open to the internet, right? And you try a username and password and it says, nuh-uh. And you say, all right, how about that one? And it goes, nuh-uh. And you keep going over and over and over until you eventually get in or until the system locks you out. Hopefully you have, by the way, brute force mitigations within your environments. Those are important. Spraying is different. Spraying is I take a password. I find all the RDP services that are on your perimeter, right, that I can see. And I go, hey, username, password for you, same one for you, same one for you, then for you, then for you. So I'm basically just hoping that one of them uses that password. They sometimes will do them low and slow. So as opposed to going pop, 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 pop down the line, it'll go like, and then I'll try that one over there. And then I'll try this one 5 minutes later. And I'll try this one 30 seconds later. And it really throws off your detection mechanism like big time. The other thing that we see is credential stuffing. And that concept is that there are known passwords either from your organization, from your users who have had their data leaked in other ways, info stealers having other accounts compromised, like their Facebook, social media accounts. And they notice like, oh, hey, look, their social media, their Facebook or whatever, they've used their corporate email to sign up for that. And they notice that thing. And there's all kinds of scripts and parsers that notice it for them. And they go, yay. And then they go and they try to use that on the domain, right? To RDP, to VPN, to connect to email, whatever. Those are surprisingly successful. Hey, by the way, stop it. Stop letting your users, enforcement, by the way, good luck with it, but at least have a policy and train them. Please don't use your freaking corporate passwords for any other account, like for any general account, even vendor accounts, right? If a vendor gets popped, right, whatever vendor it may be, I don't want to say any names because I don't want to shove anyone under the bus. Say that it's an equipment vendor of whatever type, right? And you're like, oh, it's a company account. I'm going to sign up with that account. In those cases, you probably have to sign up for that account, right? But what about, banking services, social media, just for internet forums and all this type of stuff? Why are you using your corporate account? Stop it. Sorry, that was not a threat of violence. Stop it. So, okay. Credential harvesting also can just, like I said, lead right to RDP. And then the other thing we're dealing with is actually purchased access. And that's coming up in a moment. So first, let's talk about how rampant is the problem. Well, we have a number of threat actors around the world who use sites like this guy. This is Shodan.io. Actually, let me go back and show you. There, right there, Shodan.io at the top in the URL bar there. All right, this is a site that is a massive database where they actively scan the internet constantly. All 4 billion IP4 IPs as fast as they can, as common as they can. And they look at every darn port, all 65,535, right? 65,535? Yeah. The ports that are on each of those hosts. And they're looking, hey, is there a service running here? And if something is not filtered in the firewall, then it goes, hey, what are you? And it tries to interact using a multitude of methods to get the service to say, I'm so-and-so. And like I said, RDP is like, I'm RDP. And it's easy to find. RDP normally is on port 3389. That's the default. So if I search Shodan right now, I'm going to find, hey, 3.6 million services around the world. This is horrible, right? 3.6 million services around the world that are exposing RDP to the internet, right? Does it mean that they're vulnerable to a software exploit? No, but it does mean that RDP is like, first off, these could be other services on this port, so don't get me wrong, but the majority of them are RDP. All right, so if I look at this, the United States has the bulk of them. China has a number of them, and we've got Germany, Japan. These numbers change often, not the United States ones. They're usually way up towards the top. If I'm a threat actor, now all I have to do is just scroll down and then pick someone. I go, hey, look, here's RDP listening. That's awesome. It's running what? 2000. Oh, that's cute. Check this out. Remote desktop protocol is identifying the server or host it's running on as either Windows 8.1. What year is this? Or Windows Server 2012. Again, what year is this? Why? Your organization is probably running old servers. Don't lie. You know you are. So in that case, then I have the IP address, and now I carry out my attacks on you. And then I move to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and so on and so forth. All right. That is why RDP is such a big, huge, stinky, ugly problem. And we run into it all the time. All right. I want to keep talking about it, but I think time-wise, Yeah, I got to keep it moving here. So before I go too far into phishing and into software exploitation further, everyone should be aware that there's something called an initial access broker. It is an entire ecosystem of threat actors whose sole purpose, like they live and breathe, they wake up and they go to job, whatever that means. They go to work 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock their time, or maybe they're a night owl, whatever. They get a 9 to 5 job, usually even longer. They work all day long to get into organizations. That's what they do. That's why they're called initial access brokers, actually, because they then broker that access. You will see that access being sold on what we call darknet marketplaces, like Marketo is one of them. I'll stop naming them, actually. There are a number of them, right? This is the stuff we cover in my course. Talk about, hey, here's how they get in. When they get this access, they will often sell it. When they sell the access, they often sell it to ransomware crews. And then those ransomware crews go crazy and yada, 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 right? When they sell this access, they will often include the description of the company. They will not mention the company directly because then threat researchers would tell the company, it's like, hey, your stuff's for sale, go fix it. But they will say things like healthcare or medical research or things of that nature. And guess what? Those are high value targets for obvious reasons, right? All right. Whoa, we went right into thanks for listening. Hold on. We're not done yet. All right. So I want to show you some things here. First off, let's just talk about, I'm going to pause right here, actually. Let's talk about your, your patching policy. So for software exploitation, what is your current patch policy? How often are you patching? And how long does it take to implement those patches? And for that matter, do you even know what you actually have out there that needs patching? All right. I meant to create a slide on this, and I thought I did, but apparently, see, I didn't. So, okay. What I want to throw out there is that we have tell you what, I'm going to pull it up anyway. I'm going to do it live. Check it out. I actually, I may or may not be showing you content directly from my class right now. I'm going to share this screen out because I want you to see it. It's important. So what screen are we on? Screen 1. Boop. Here you go. There it is. These are examples. By the way, this graphic and this data comes from Mr. Alan Liska, and he is the author of a book on ransomware. It's on my desk, but let's pretend my desk is clean because it's not. There's stuff all over. I don't even know where it is. So anyway, you can find the book for free, by the way, at for528.com/book. I gave him a /book because I love it. It's a free PDF. Just go read it. Great book on ransomware. He does a bunch of research. Here's an example. The software that was being exploited. Why is this so scary? Okay, first off, it's old. This here was taken by technically early 2022 is when it was published. It was primarily stuff that was being leveraged in 2021. Take a look at some of these years in here, though. I see some 2019, some 2018. Is there 2018 in there? Oh, there's some 2017s. Yay! We're seeing all these dates for these exploits, or vulnerabilities that were getting heavily exploited. And look on the right-hand side of the slide here. What are these products? They are our email systems, our file sharing ecosystems, our firewalls, our security as a service, platform as a service, whatever as a service, our virtualization platforms, our VPN solutions. What did I just name aside from our operating systems, right? What did I just name? Every damn thing that we have that facilitates their digital lives, right? Our digital service life. All of those freaking things eventually have exploitation possibilities, and people are not recognizing, hey, my firewall needs to remain up to date. Hey, my VPN service needs to remain up to date. We're getting people to recognize internally, yes, software needs to be patched. If threat actors get into the environment and you still have not patched zero logon or print nightmare, you think, well, no one, that's just on the inside, right? So who cares? No. Once they get in, if they can leverage those, now they can escalate their privileges and become administrators, domain administrators, enterprise administrators within your Active Directory. That is all bad. You do not want that. They're going to be highly successful, right? Oh, good. So these guys here serve as an example of what you really need to focus on, all the different types of appliances around your organization. And that then takes me into when threat actors send an email, they will often send in that email one of two things. They might send a link, right? That link may go to a file sharing site where that threat actor has then hosted some type of file that's malicious that will then download malware, right? Which will then lead to another piece of malware, typically a stage 1 or stage 2, usually to Cobalt Strike at some point. And then ransomware, right? A ransomware campaign followed by, or ended with, I should say, a payload deployment, which is the encryptor. There's a wonderful website. You can go to 4528.com/LOTS, LOTS. It stands for Living Off Trusted Sites. And give me 1 second here. Okay, I just saw my timing. Cool. So I'm going to, about 3 or 4 minutes, go here. I'm going to keep going. So these sites where they'll have you go download things, they will seem innocuous. They'll be like drive.google.com. They'll be like dropbox.com. They'll be like this guy, which if you're not blocking and alerting on mega.nz or mega.io right now, please start. All right, you can go to this site and you can filter on phishing. Just click phishing or type in plus phishing. These are the sites you want to monitor. These are the sites that are being used for when threat actors send emails with a link that goes to a place where they then store bad stuff for your users to then access and then leads to ransomware. WeTransfer, Mediafire, all these, and a lot of these, by the way, YouTube, okay. A lot of these are sites that you may think, well, it's just box.com. You should have a policy that states you allow certain sites for file sharing. For all the rest, block them. Or at the very least, alert on them. I recommend blocking and alerting on them. If you don't allow your users at all to use Box, block it. And if you're saying, well, we have groups that need Box, okay, block it for everyone else, right? And alert on everyone else. Like there's always ways around it. So least privilege, right? The whole, I don't want to say zero trust. Let's go with least privilege type of concept. You only allow who really needs to access it. So check this site out, right? /lots. 4528.com/blocklist. This is an email block list I put together. If the threat actor sends an actual attachment, they may be one of these types of files. All right. I put this list together and I thought it was cool. Then I found that the same person, see the graphic there, Mr. Docs, who provides living off trusted sites, also provides a way better resource than mine. It's called FileSec, and you can get to the 4528.com/FileSec, and you can click on phishing. And he shows you here, I'm not sure, yeah, they show you various extensions you should be blocking. Should you ever let into your organization a .cab file attached to email? No. Why are you allowing that via email? All right. He's also mentioning like docm, a macro-enabled Word file. And if you click on these, you get information. Why is this a problem? What are the recommendations? So on and so forth. Resources to find out more about each of these individual files. This is what I had planned on building out here. So let's just get rid of my lame project. Go here. Go check it out. FileSec. You need to know what to block in your email gateway. If you're wondering, our users may need to transfer these things. So, okay, how about they use the approved file sharing site? I mean, OneDrive, something, right? Don't let them just randomly send it with an email. No good. All right. We talked about software exploitation and patching and knowing what's out there. We talked about the whole phishing thing, and we talked about RDP. I think I'm going long in the tooth here, so I will go ahead and just transition, actually. Oops, that's my class. Wrong slideshow. That guy. Transition over here. By the way, if you want to learn more about intrusion access brokers, go to for528.com/IAB, intrusion access brokers. So the whole thing that I wanted to show today is that what are the vulnerabilities that we really face in terms of ransomware? It's the primary infection vectors that provide initial access. Look into your password policies, look into actually properly patching your stuff, and just knowing that it's so often that old vulnerabilities are being used and being used successfully. And when it comes to phishing, train your users, know what to block in your security email gateways, and something else I forgot. My wrap up, I just failed at the end. Dang it, Ryan. All right. Anyway, so if we have time for questions, awesome. Yeah. What do we think?
Ryan, that was fire, man. Your energy is always off the charts. Love it. If you look over on that start tab in comments, you've got quite a number of questions. So I'll let you just jump in and start tackling some of those.
Cool. Let's see. Well, here's a question that's it's pretty broad, but it's a good one. And it's, what is the best application as a network security to use and actively discover these things? I'm going to go with a security incident and event management platform, or a SIEM, or a simple log aggregator. Your whole thing in this regard is visibility. You need to have eyes on what's occurring within the environment. You need to have logs, and you need to aggregate those somewhere, such that your security analysts, your security operations center, your managed detection and response team, whatever it is then able to filter through that information. Oh, for the top three things we just talked about, right? RDP, Windows logs a ton of event codes. I don't know about a ton, a lot of event codes for RDP that will tell you if it was successful, right? There's 4624 events that are logon type 10, or technically also logon type 3, depending on your network level authentication setting in your environment. Did you know that 21 through 25 are actually specifically terminal services logs, and they indicate very specific things about RDP connecting, disconnecting, reconnecting. There's also 1149, which is fired in the older operating systems whenever someone even tries to connect to RDP, and the newer ones if it's successful. The trick there is you can look, if you have those logs at scale to look through, look for port 149. Look for Windows Event ID 1149. If you see that ID firing, the boxes that's firing on, they are running RDP. Done. Because someone is trying to connect to it. Done. If you didn't know that about that box, go fix the problem. Another thing is monitoring, essentially from, I'll digress on that. For phishing, right? Your email logs themselves, they should be going into a platform, right? Logs that are coming in that will then alert, for example, on attachments. And if you have a tool or the ability to pull in those links also from the email bodies themselves, you can then operationalize those links to actually have them scanned and checked. Another thing, of course, is your firewall logs, right? If you're not pulling in your firewall logs and alerting on things like, and I don't mean to speak ill of Dropbox. I actually love Dropbox and I use it. My course share is on Dropbox. I love Dropbox. Just say you don't approve Dropbox. Alert on it, right? How do you do that? Your firewall logs need to be in a SIEM, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So it's very important that you have a SIEM. That's the number one thing that I always say. I'm just scrolling up here. Someone made a comment here. Application and device sprawl is a huge issue. Can't protect what you can't see. 110% yes, freaking yes. One of the problems we find often is that an organization has someone or some group in charge of something, and then they go away or they transition to a new group or whatever. And that thing becomes orphaned, but that thing may still be sitting on the internet going, hi, I'm running RDP or whatever. Or it may be some type of product or service itself that is exposed to the internet and is vulnerable now. You know, say you use a product and you have it just sitting there and it's not being used. There's no one who's maintaining it, or a first party utility. And they're just, you know, we call them servers in the closet, because my first case I ever had as a consultant, the entry vector was a server that was in a closet at it was a hospital. There was a closet, and I don't mean an IT closet. I mean a closet, like where they had medical, you find McKesson branded stuff all over, you know, gauze pads, well, I don't know, whatever you keep in those places. And there's just a server at the top there, and it was on, powered on, and it was running. It had active AC cooling. It was connected to the internet, and they didn't even know it was there. They're like, what is this? They asked me, what is this? I'm like, what? Why are you asking me what this is? What are you talking about? So you have to be very, very careful for understanding what is within your organization. Obviously, asset management is huge, and dynamic asset management. I'm not sure if that's an industry term. It's a Ryan term, meaning that you have something scanning to find things that may be within your environment. And when you find things you don't know about, you learn about them.
Listen, I need a class on ransomware. I also need a class on public speaking from Ryan Chapman. That was amazing, man.
I like doing it. Can you tell?
Your
well,
energy
I'm
is
coming back.
amazing.
I'm coming back during the panel discussion. So
yes. So please, if you're here, you want more of Ryan, you don't want to miss the panel discussion that's happening a little bit later.